I have a rendezvous with death. We'll preserve the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud and abuse. In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that?
With the arrival of Trump 2.0, the winds of change are being felt across the Washingtonian swamp. For the status quo spendthrift deep staters, those winds have a sub-zero wind chill. But the usual suspects on the political and ideological left aren't taking the freeze sitting down. A cadre of those who routinely feed at the governmental taxpayer monetary feed trough, including the National Council of Nonprofits and other non-government organizations, have taken legal action against the Office of Management and Budget and its acting director, Vaeth, following a directive that temporarily halted the disbursement of federal grant and loan funds. This move by Democrat attorneys general from states like New York, California, New Jersey, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island to sue over the policy seems less about legality and more about protecting the flow of the free taxpayer federal money into leftist and left-leaning politically aligned nonprofits and NGOs. Attorney General Letitia James of New York, you remember her. She's one of the Soros-installed AGs that went after Donald Trump over business practices that no one had a problem with. James branded the directive as dangerous, reckless, illegal, and unconstitutional. She's undoubtedly more concerned with maintaining funding for organizations that align with her specific political agendas rather than addressing the broader implications of fiscal responsibility. Vaeth's rationale for the funding pause, to ensure that federal dollars are spent in alignment with the president's policy goals, highlights the much-needed and long overdue scrutiny of how taxpayer money is funneled into special interest groups and nonprofit organizations. This review is crucial, considering the vast sums often allocated to these entities, which may not reflect the interests or needs of the general populace, but serve radically niche political ideologies. As reported in thehill.com,
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer accused the Trump administration of blatantly disobeying the law by holding up virtually all vital funds that support programs in every community across the country. Congress approved these investments, and they are not optional. They are the law, Schumer said. These grants help people in red states and blue states support families, help parents raise kids, and lead to stronger communities. He said the move could jeopardize billions upon billions of community grants and financial support that help millions of people across the country. It will mean missed payrolls and rent payments and everything in between. Chaos for everything from universities to nonprofit charities.
The plaintiffs claim that the guidance will devastate nonprofits dependent on government grants, paints a picture of organizations addicted to federal funding. This presents a legitimate point, questioning their sustainability and true independence. If these groups are so reliant on federal funds to operate, one must ask how effective or necessary their missions truly are without such support. Furthermore, the argument that the guidance breaches the Administrative Procedure Act by being arbitrary and capricious reveals how the far left manipulates the law to advance their transformative and spendthrift agendas. It evidences an overreach by these organizations to shield their financial interests under the guise of legal rights. The assertion that this could infringe on First Amendment rights, particularly for groups advocating for left-leaning causes like LGBTQ rights, suggests a fear that funding might be more critically evaluated based on merit rather than political alignment. Basically, this lawsuit is less about protecting the constitutional rights of nonprofits and NGOs and more about defending a profligate system where federal funds, taxpayer dollars in an age of incredible national debt are disproportionately directed towards far-left special interest groups at the expense of broader, more equitable, and constitutional public policy goals. The reaction to this funding pause indicates how entrenched some nonprofits and NGOs have become in relying on government support, read taxpayer dollars, raising questions about the efficiency and impartiality of the federal funding distribution qualifying process. Bottom line, if a nonprofit organization or a federal grant-eligible non-government organization is worthy of support, that support should come exclusively from the private sector, not the extraction of tax dollars, under threat by the taxman from the general public. If you want to support a nonprofit or NGO, I applaud you. More power to you. But government shouldn't force me to support axillary organizations outside the constitutionally required entities of the federal government. That's the very meaning of unconstitutional. In the end, the temporary funding freeze to evaluate which initiatives were receiving taxpayer dollars was rescinded, but not until billions of dollars in funding for special interests and unconstitutional wealth disbursement were eliminated. Quite frankly, I think that $50 million spent on condoms for Palestinians in Gaza, which they filled with flammable materials to firebomb farms and local civilian populations in Israel, or free benefits for people who've broken the law to be here in the first place, well, those funds could be better spent on Americans in need right here in the United States. But hey, I'm not a federally elected or appointed spendthrift, so what the hell do I know? When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station, WGUL AM 930 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida. And we don't take any federal funding.
You're listening to Underground USA.
A free and independent media is the backbone of our great republic. So it's crucial to have media outlets that aren't influenced by big tech censorship or the leftist mainstream media complex. But that means supporting journalistic outlets that bring us the truth without spinning facts to push a narrative. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee once a month at Starbucks, you can support the free speech mission of undergroundusa.com, an independent, reader-supported, and sometimes irreverent podcast and publication that gives you the real story without the bias. Go to undergroundusa.com/UUSA. That's undergroundusa.com/UUSA to receive a 25% discount on an annual subscription, bringing every new podcast and article directly into your email inbox, circumventing the censors and fact-checkers. Remember, knowledge is power, and staying informed is one of the best ways to protect our republic. Go out there and seek the truth, my friends. Subscribe to undergroundusa.com today.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Well, Frank, of course, this happened since last we talked on Monday. One of the perspectives that you have as a retired firefighter is what's going on with these first responders. I can't imagine what could ever prepare you to be able to go in and either recover or rescue even with all the professionalism involved, it must be incredibly trying.
Well, you rely on your training. Your heartbeat always goes up on a call, always, no matter what it is, from the smallest fire or car accident to something like this. You get into the moment, you do your mission. That's what it is. I can tell you right now, the people entering the water who were in dry suits because the Potomac was just so cold, they were hoping to find somebody. Mm-hmm. They kind of knew in the back of their minds that they weren't, but they were hoping. So they were moving as efficiently as they could, trying to do what they needed to do. And when the call was made that it was going to transform into a recovery mission rather than a rescue mission, hearts sank. But they continued on with their job out of respect for the people who died and their families. So you hit the mark there. It's about professionalism. Mm-hmm. And they will carry this with them for the rest of their lives. This isn't one of those things that you just go back to tomorrow with after it's done. It's something that becomes a point in your life that you will never forget and that affects you for the rest of your life and who you are. So, when you see firefighters and policemen out there doing their jobs and they seem to be happy in doing that, remember they carry these scars with them. Mm-hmm. When they go through something like this. Civilians can go back to their daily life. The news cycle kind of takes over for them a little bit, and the things fall into the past. But people who go to work every day dealing with the grisliest of things, they live those things every single day. So this is why we respect people who wear the badge, and we don't do incredibly BS things like march against them and scream to defund them and riot against them and things like that. We just don't do it. Ignorant people do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But I appreciate what you're saying so much, Frank, and I know everybody out there does as well. Because again, when the crash occurred, we saw the static shots from across the river and so forth, and all you see are all the flashing lights from every single emergency vehicle that's responded, and there are hundreds of first responders. And but what they do for us, as you said, your heart rate goes up every time you get a call, but they're doing this, and they still go out on that call no matter what they find when they get there. That to me is just unbelievable.
Well, that's the definition of what public service is supposed to be all about. It's not about the bureaucrat. It's not about the politician. It's about people who give of themselves for others. That's what the core of it is supposed to be. Whether it's a fun job or a grisly job, you do the job. And that's why I have absolutely no respect for politicians who politicize situations like this and bureaucrats who take advantage of it to advance their own ideology and agenda. They're scum. So we either have public servants or we have opportunistic bureaucrats and elected officials. We seem to have a lot of bureaucrats and opportunistic elected officials these days, and not a lot of public servants.
No kidding. And but again, we never see this kind of bravery, this kind of dedication. I think it's just overwhelming to so many people. But that's why we appreciate our first responders so very, very much. And Frank, when we come back, I'd like to ask you as well about some of these hearings that are going on, and some of the
speaking of bureaucrats and opportunistic politicians.
That's right. Yeah, and just they're doing this sort of dramatic, diversion bluster routine, which tells me they got nothing. All they want to do is just try to throw dirt in the air here.
I've never seen, and there's a lot of pathetic moments that have taken place since the advent of TV and radio coming out of Washington, D.C. But this display's been pathetic.
Senator Peter Welch, was basically saying to Kash Patel, can you say the words that Joe Biden won the 2020 election? And Kash Patel, of course, is not going to be controlled like that. He wouldn't do it. And Senator Welch was none too happy about it. But it really did demonstrate to me, Frank, that, you have to say the specific thing. And if you don't, then we're going to paint you as something or other. But, this isn't the way it's done in America, is it?
No, it's not. And the way that a lot of the people who are questioning these witnesses, and that's what they call the nominees, witnesses, is shameful. I mean, beyond shameful. I don't know of a stronger word besides pathetic. I'm going to take that as a no. I'm going to take that as a yes. How about you just take the answer as it was given? I don't need you telling me what he just said was yes or no. It goes into the record. You've asked your question. Let him answer. And this constant interrupting and talking over. Why do the nominees even show up? If you're going to do that, just tell me what my answer was going to be and quit wasting my time.
Right. No, you've got a real point. And that that would demonstrate again the ridiculousness of how these Democrat senators operate.
Well, in a courtroom, if you're a witness on the stand and a prosecutor or a defense attorney was going at you like that, interrupting you and never allowing you to answer a question fully, there would be an objection about badgering the witness. Mm-hmm. And the judge would make a ruling that if it were executed the way these people have been treated, would have been, you know what? Yeah, it's sustained. You can't do that. you can't do it. Knock it off.
Right.
But the arrogance of these people on these committees, their agenda dripping off their political fangs, just won't let them get out of their own way. Ask a question. If you're not smart enough to ask a question that creates a telling answer, then you need to be stuck with the answer that you get. But the examination is supposed to be about that person, the nominee. It's not supposed to be a pathetic display of your own narcissism. And that's what I'm seeing here with people like Patel, especially Kennedy, too. I mean, I don't know how to express outrage enough that these people shouldn't have been elected to office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If this is the way they're going to act on televised official proceedings, to showboat like this with such jaded, predetermined conclusions, they shouldn't be on an examination panel.
Yeah, exactly right. And further, Frank, they continue to bring about these false narratives. I don't know how many times, because they love to talk about January the 6th. This is like their go-to thing. And they keep saying things like, many police officers died that day, or give that impression, but that's not what happened at all. And they just sort of run right by it like, it's all we all know this, it's all common knowledge, but it's not.
And this is something that Republicans consistently fail on, and with a miserable grade of the failing kind. These are sound bites that they should be jamming right now, spending the money in these people's districts and states, saying, no police officers died. There's no record of any police officers dying, yet your elected official continues to advance these lies. This is the politics that Donald Trump was elected to flush down the toilet. So next time you pull the lever, remember that your elected official blatantly and bald-faced lies to you. Are you willing to put up with that? And let's start asking the people that send these people to Congress to have to stand up for what they do when they get there. If you don't start, and this is an Olinsky rule, if you don't start ridiculing the people who make these bad decisions, they're just going to continue to make these bad decisions. And if they're too thick to understand they're getting lied to, then you have an obligation to point it out to them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And one other thing,
and boy, there's enough of it on display this week and last week to fill up the entire silly season.
No, exactly. And something else that's apparent, too, is that, soon after the, building up to the inauguration, it's like, well, things are kind of, it's aligning for Trump, and maybe some of these Democrats, even if it's just for their own self-interest, maybe they'll try to kind of go along with some things. But really, the resistance is building back up, and they're really trying to make this happen. And it's kind of pathetic because they're saying and doing the same stupid, silly things like you're talking about, which got them thrown out in the first place, as it were, meaning that Trump was able to win so handily.
And this is why we have to keep the pressure on. You can't go back to, there's Blumenthal just, vomiting invective and stupid stuff again during a hearing. That's just crazy him. We can't go back to that. It has to be, you know what? We went through a grueling election cycle and we decided enough. And if you're just going to keep doing the same thing, we need to get rid of you. We need to marginalize your power. And if you're some curmudgeon like Blumenthal, who is just nauseating to listen to. I mean, nauseating to listen to. You've got to go. It's time for you to go. So this is exactly what I mean by keeping the pressure on. These people need to hear that we voted for change. You're not the change. You're doing the same thing. You're outing yourself as a deep state operative that needs to be retired. And all of these people up there who are just lying time after time after time and instituting the answers that the witness that they want the witness to give, I'll take that as a no. I'll take that as a yes. So you're telling me. I don't want to hear any of that. You're doing that. You're defending the deep state. You're defending the bureaucracy. You want the status quo to remain. And we voted not to have that happen. So you're outing yourself, but we've got to keep our scorecards because it's got to last. That outrage has to last all the way to the next election. It's got to result in a larger majority for people who want change, not sending the same idiots back who will do exactly what you're seeing on TV today. Complete waste of time. We're learning nothing about the nominees.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think the one person who probably does really take the cake has got to be Adam Schiff. I mean, he really thinks that what he's saying is like he's like, I've got so many people, they just love what I'm saying. I mean, you can kind of see it in his face, but it's just ridiculous.
The fact that he's on any committee after what he did during the January 6th committee and the many provable lies that he advanced and just stuck with, and that's just January 6th. We can go back to Russian collusion and Trump, Russia, and everything else. And Hunter Biden's laptop. This guy's got a serial problem with the truth. So, one, shame on the people of California for sending this moron to Washington to inflict upon us for the next 6 years. But two, why is he on any committee? His credibility is absolutely shot. He's a political partisan hack. So we're going to learn nothing from him. No question that comes out of his mouth is going to be about, is this nominee the best nominee for the job? It's always going to be about, how can I best destroy you to frame something good for my political party? And that's right. Not government. That's politics.
That's right. Yeah, it's the Adam Schiff brand, and that's all he wants.
I'm sure as soon as he was seated on that committee in the chambers, they put vomit bags on the back of the chairs.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Wokeism is a threat to the very foundations of our great nation and to the very principles of liberty and justice. The goal of wokeism is to divide us, pitting Americans against one another based on race, gender, and identity. This ideology undermines free speech and open dialogue, which are the bedrock of our republic. It promotes censorship and cancels anyone who dares to challenge its extreme agenda. We must stand against this cultural Marxism and protect our constitutional rights. Say no to wokeism.
The foundation of our great nation lies in our unwavering commitment to freedom, and at its core is the principle of free speech. It's not just a right, but a duty to speak our minds, respectfully debate, and challenge ideas. Today, free speech is under attack by the forces of the deep state and the globalists. We must all do our part to protect free speech, for without it, we'd be lost in a sea of woke conformity and censorship. We have the right. Protect it.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Before we go, a few words on yet another communist Chinese initiative to collect data on foreign nationals and specifically Americans. DeepSeek, the Chinese app that triggered a $1 trillion meltdown in the U.S. markets this week, is not only storing its rapidly expanding pools of U.S. user data on servers in China, but is also suspected of having ulterior motives driven by the Chinese Communist Party's agenda. This situation echoes the national security concerns that led to Congress's crackdown on TikTok. Despite its popularity, it topped the charts in both Apple's App Store and Google Play Store on Tuesday with over 2 million downloads since its international debut. Despite its popularity, DeepSeek raises red flag alarms, no pun intended, about data privacy and national security. Unlike other AI chatbots like ChatGPT, which also gather extensive user data, DeepSeek's use of China-based servers marks a significant and concerning distinction, posing a direct privacy threat to American users. Angela Zhang, a law professor at the University of Southern California specializing in Chinese tech regulations, said this.
What sets this context apart is that DeepSeek is not just a company, but a tool potentially leveraged by the CCP for surveillance and influence. The collection of sensitive data like IP addresses and keystroke patterns could easily be exploited for espionage or to manipulate public opinion, posing a clear national security threat.
DeepSeek's terms of service openly admit that user data is stored on secure servers located in the People's Republic of China, automatically collecting personal details including device model, operating system, keystroke patterns or rhythms, IP addresses, and system language. This level of access to personal data under the control of the Communist Chinese Party, which has a notorious record of using technology for authoritarian control, is deeply troubling. All companies based in China are legally obligated to comply with the CCP's cybersecurity laws. These laws require them to share data with the government upon request, essentially making DeepSeek a conduit to state surveillance. The security risks associated with DeepSeek's close ties to Beijing have prompted exacting responses. For instance, the U.S. Navy has explicitly ordered its members to steer clear of using this chatbot, highlighting the gravity of the situation. This move underscores a broader concern about the strategic use of technology by the Communist Chinese Party to undermine privacy, security, and democratic values across the West. The mainstream populace has gotten so used to thinking of Chinese business ventures as simpatico with Western business initiatives that they completely ignore that the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese People's Liberation Army are at the core of everything they do, at the core of their commu-capitalist economic system. To wit, I suppose if you didn't listen about the dangers of TikTok, you wouldn't care about the dangers of this AI data-collecting Communist Chinese initiative. But if you're short-sighted enough not to see the danger of the Communist Chinese amassing data on you and your children through these apps, then you're naive to the goals they have set for themselves, to be the dominant force in the world. And I use the term force deliberately because communism, even in its hybrid form of commu-capitalism, cannot thrive without coercion. I also want to extend my sympathies and prayers to the victims of the plane and helicopter collision in Washington, D.C. earlier this week. Never should have happened, An investigation should reveal things that we need to change in order to make sure something like this never happens again. Those playing politics with this should be utterly ashamed of themselves.
Our federal government has been co-opted by the globalist sycophants of the deep state bureaucracy. At every turn, this bureaucracy expands its power over both the American people and the states in which they live. The framers knew corruptible men would one day bastardize their elected authorities and attempt to centralize government in Washington, D.C. That's why they gave us the 9th and 10th Amendments. That's why they left standing the tool of nullification. In his book, Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government, Frank Salvato lays out how states can claw back their constitutionally mandated powers from the overreach of the federal government, doing so in a manner that prevents a second bloody civil war. Get your copy of Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government. Available on Amazon.com in Kindle form and paperback.
If you like the podcast, please head on over to undergroundusa.com and sign up for our Substack. It brings every new podcast and article directly into your email inbox. And remember, talk politics, current events, religion with your family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. When we have these conversations, we realize that we have more in common than we have in difference, and that creates the e pluribus unum that our nation's supposed to be about. It frustrates the deep state dividers, too, who are trying to balkanize us in the pursuit of power and control. Thanks for listening, downloading, and sharing. You're listening to Underground USA. No fear, no wokeism, no political correctness. My name is Frank Salvato.